this is going to be a really fun conversation about Gen Z and money. I'm here with Katrina Noel, and we're going to do a little bit of a duet in terms of sharing findings from our Future of Money study, both quantitative and qualitative findings. And a quick logistic here, you can put your questions in the chat and we'll try to answer those as we go or save time at the end to address those. So, some introductions. I'm Lila Rayner. I'm CEO and founder of Logica Research. We are a custom insights company. We focus on financial services and fintech companies and growing organizations. We conduct research to help with product and service development, marketing effectiveness, and thought leadership and PR research. Our goal is to help organizations deepen brand engagement and drive business growth. And I'm here with Katrina Noel with No Research, and she and her team have been a great partner this past year on our Future of Money study, bringing qualitative insights to our quantitative findings. Katrina.
Nice to see everybody today. Thank you, Lila. Yes, we're super excited to do a speed round on Gen Z. We were thrilled to be invited to team up with Logica throughout the pandemic to do a qualitative deep dive and bring some of the insights from their long-term Future of Money study to life. We've actually done 3 rounds during the pandemic and another round this spring in whatever you call this spring. So a lot of the data points and stories we have to tell are from a little bit longer period of time. The data you're seeing today is from the latest round. Super excited to be here, and back over to you, Lila.
Yeah, so a little bit on the methodology. We've mentioned the Future of Money study. So what we're talking about today is grounded in our Future of Money study, which we started in 2017. And we've been conducting the study semi-annually since that time in the spring and in the fall. Last year, as Katrina mentioned, we did a couple of extra waves. So we had 4 waves over the course of the year and during the pandemic. And Katrina joined us and did dyads and one-on-one interviews and some groups. And we'll be sharing some of those results as well in the form of videos today. And just a note on the sample, it's general population in the US, 1,000 US adults. And then we do this oversample of Gen Zers, and we've been including them since 2017. So now those older Gen Zers are 16 to 24 years old, and they are starting jobs. They're in and out of school, college. And so lots of changes for them in terms of managing money. When we look at one of our core questions that we asked in the last 12 months, where COVID has had the biggest impact on this generation in terms of their wallets, we can see that at the beginning of the pandemic, it was about making money or work, but that's come down a bit. Spending money kind of went up a bit last year and sort of flattened out, but saving and investing is up, which means that's top of mind for people in terms of how they're thinking about their wallets and the impact of COVID. So let's get into that first part, making money. The big thing to keep in mind about this generation is that they are managing multiple income streams. Almost half of them have side hustles. They're also working part-time and full-time. That money is going into bank accounts. It's going into PayPal and Venmo accounts, Cash App, and they have to manage those different sources. And we'll talk in a second about how they're also using cash. So lots of income streams going to different places that they have to keep track of. And this in part, along with that ability or inability to work during the pandemic, has created some financial stress for them. 2/3 are stressed about their finances. And you'll hear us use this term resourceful about this generation. They are very resourceful managing, trying to get jobs during this past year and managing those different sources and really focused on managing to a budget. So they really are looking like a generation that wants to be on top of their finances.
And I think that's important. The non-official word we've been using as well is scrappy. And I think that definitely holds true as they cobble together the side hustles. They try to figure out, are they going to work part-time or full-time? How is that changing given everything that is changing with work life these days? But they're drawing from multiple sources to both have income and supplement that income. And their scrappiness is sort of stretching to looking for information about how to extend that income. So how to control the expenses so they don't go into debt, and how to extend their income in any way possible. We did speak to a lot of folks who said, there is an embarrassment about either debt or not having money for short-term expenses, especially social ones. So the quote here kind of points to that there's a little bit of a public image thing here about that too, about needing to keep those expenses in check. As Lila mentioned, we have a lot of great videos today, because it's not just about hearing from us who aren't Gen Z, it's about hearing from them themselves. So we're going to go for the first video now about making money.
Time I see an opportunity where I can make money, even if it's just $5, I'll go for it. I'm willing to scrape at anything. Like whenever I have an app and it says like, send this to a friend, and if they sign up, you get $5 each. I message like every single one of my friends. I'm that person now.
I collect a lot of bottles. Like I'll actually go around, I'll go to my friends' houses, they save them for me. I'll try to make some money on the side. I bought my iPhone, which is the XR. It cost me about $800. And afterwards, I was just like, I cannot believe I spent that much money. So my rationale is, I'm going to buy my next phone with bottle money. So I can just say, I turned in some bottles and I got a new phone.
I would say it's definitely a bit more scrappy, because it's not just, going to one store or wandering in, and everyone really does their research now and makes sure like, okay, this is, what I'm expecting and in my budget.
I have like a budget. So I kind of just said, okay, I got my car payment, I got groceries, and I got, money for my hair appointment. So I kind of just, broke it down and, made sure I had enough. And I had enough for me, in case I needed anything.
And they do break it down. We heard a lot of Excel sheets and apps and all kinds of things that they're using to kind of keep track of this along the way.
Yeah, so I think you see they're using these buckets of money. So we're going to talk about what they're using to pay next, how they're spending that money, less about what they're spending it on, but what they're using to pay with. And in our Future of Money study, we ask about payments in a couple of different ways. We ask about in-person and online, and we're focusing on in-person here because we're seeing some big shifts in terms of how this generation plans to pay in the future. So right now, if you look at some of the gray numbers on this slide, you'll see that Gen Z is still focused on cash. They're using cash to pay today. They're also using debit cards, but you can also see a big shift if you look at the orange numbers here. Debit card is still going to be top of wallet. Cash is coming down, and this generation expects to use apps more. And they already are, but they still lag a bit behind their older sibling millennial generation and parent generation. And then credit card is interesting because it remains relatively flat. This generation isn't anticipating so much using credit cards. Now that might change as they get older, but it doesn't mean they're not interested in credit. They just think about credit a little bit differently. They're using buy now, pay later and installment payment plans more than they did before the pandemic. 22% are using them more. So we know from our research and the qualitative research that Katrina did, it's really important to this generation to manage to that budget. And that's the benefit they see in the buy now, pay later.
Yeah, and so I think this digital payments are definitely preferred overall because of the convenience. But some people, we definitely hear cash in the wallet for emergencies. Some places are cash only. Some people are working jobs that tips are a big part of that, within these age ranges. So I think they have to be prepared for a life where not everything takes digital payments yet. And they're really looking forward to it getting to a place where that might be. We actually just talked a lot about logistics of they like the phone cases that have a couple cards in your ID in it. Very hard to carry around a lot of cash in those. So there's some practical concerns as well. And the video reel we have this time around is showing that kind of diversity of relationship to cash and real money, or as some folks told us, it feels like fake money because there isn't a digital trail. So we'll hear from some of them now.
I, on the other hand, do always have cash on hand. Couple 20s, just whatever it's needed for. I generally don't use it as much, but it's always there. it's just nice to have. Sometimes there's cash only places.
Yeah, if I had like 20 bucks, I'll go to an ATM and deposit it. Like, I don't want it. I feel like cash just feels a little bit like fake money to me, where like because it's not in my bank account, it's like doesn't quite feel real when I spend it. So I just never feel like safe with myself when I have a lot of cash.
Well, it's more convenient for me to use a prepaid card because I don't have a bank account. It's quick, it's easy. I only pay a $5 fee for my debit card, so that's great.
I want to start working on my credit score because I don't really know what my credit score is right now, or if I even really have one. So
Use either Zelle or Venmo or Cash App to make payments. It was actually funny. My little cousin graduated high school, and we had a graduation party for her, and my older cousin forgot the card and the cash that he was going to give her for graduation. And he was like, "Oh, it's fine. I'll just Venmo her." And he's maybe in his 30s. And he's like, "Wait, but like this generation doesn't use Venmo. They use Cash App more."
So we're all navigating it, right? We're all navigating what app we're supposed to use to get money to whom in our lives these days.
Yeah, what's interesting here is I think in our generation, we would have heard that digital money was fake money, but here they're saying cash is fake money. And again, as you think about, they're managing these different incomes, their income flows, they're managing these outgoes as well. And it's complicated. They have money coming into these different types of accounts and in cash, and then they have money going out from it. And it's hard for them to keep track of. So if you think about this resourceful mindset and they're trying to manage to a budget, they need help really tracking all of this. And there are a lot of companies who are focused on this market. I was, I think, an early adopter of the Current app for my teens to help manage money. There's many more now that are helping this market. So, and hopefully many of them on the phone, but they definitely want help managing to that budget and helping build wealth and plan both for the short term and long term. So next we're going to talk about saving and investing. So this generation, we saw that they are stressed. They are looking for ways to reduce that stress. So almost a quarter want a financial institution to help calculate how much money to save. They also are putting more money into the stock market than they did before the pandemic. That's up at 22% now. And if you're interested, they are investing in crypto. Probably many of you on the phone are or know this generation is, and over half expect to own crypto in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and I think to the question in the chat, yeah, that stress is not unrelated to student loan situations that folks have gotten themselves into. And so when they're thinking about saving, they're thinking about both this near term and longer term on that. And that near term really is, do I have enough for the weekend? Do I have enough for my next vacation? That kind of savings for those short term wins is definitely at play, as well as I may have some big life adult moments coming up, like moving and trying to pay that debt down. So how do I get my head around saving for that as well? What we did here is that there's not as much perhaps compromise as, Lila and I were talking about maybe in our generation, where you put aside the short-term expenditures for that heavier burden. We heard from a lot of folks that it's important. You work hard for your money, and they want to be able to have those short-term wins, gains, experiences, and social opportunities that affords. So they will make whatever tools they have work for them, whether that's debit cards, checking savings accounts, any of these apps, because they really want to at all times be maximizing and looking at those gains. So when we ask them about investing in things like crypto and all the other types of investment that they're getting into these days, they spoke a lot about it being towards short-term gains, rather than thinking of it as kind of a set it, forget it, longer term investment strategy. So we thought that was really interesting. There's a big opportunity in this interest that they have in getting more involved in the financial world, in investment vehicles, and all the different conduits they have to get some of these short-term gains, as well as a few of them are thinking long-term as well. You'll hear about that a little bit here.
So I think I've always been very much save, save, save. Like even babysitting, I remember keeping $10 out to like spend and then keeping the rest.
My parents are very conscious with their money. They came to America with like nothing in their pockets. My parents don't really enjoy traveling, and when they do, they're a little bit more on the conservative side, where if I'm going to travel to have fun, I don't mind spending because I'm gonna work for that trip.
I want to be able to like, get my own place and you be able to, afford, a nice car. I thought about investing, but I didn't know how that works
Maybe
either.
a lot of people have gone into like investing in stocks, so I do want to learn about that. I'm not involved in it now, but I feel like I would just turn to a friend that has like done their research on the topic.
Like the Robinhood craze opened the door and opened everyone's eyes to investing in our generation. It's like, oh, it's so accessible, it's so easy, why not? And it's a way to make money.
A big thing I do with my money is I invest it now. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, I figured Zoom would go up, so I did invest in Zoom. And also, I'm sure you've heard of this cryptocurrency rave. I did get into Dogecoin as well. So right now, I'm looking more into long-term investments to see what could help me make money in the future.
So
Yeah, so for all of you on the call here who are thinking about investing for this generation, I think you saw a couple of personas of potential investors there. And I have an idea if anybody wants to take it on, which is to give investing gift cards, like we used to give, our grandparents gave bonds or stock certificates. How do you give investing as a gift? I think there's a huge opportunity there with this generation. So we're going to wrap up here with a few pieces about brands and how you can reach this generation. So of course you want to reach them where they are. This generation is much more likely than the older generations be turning to friends and colleagues for financial advice. But what's also interesting is that they are looking to financial institutions and financial advisors for advice too. So what we'll hear, I think, in a moment is there's this combination of wanting their network to weigh into what they're doing, but also they look for more traditional sources and more secure sources of advice and information. And they want help from financial institutions in building wealth. If you look at that 28%, and actually that's higher than it is for any other generation. So super interesting there. I know there's just many, again, they're resourceful. They're going to all the sources for information.
But it's interesting how they're looking at the various sources. To them, not all sources are created equally. So they're looking for these newer tools as that convenience. To Tim's point in the chat, it's easy, it's convenient, it's accessible, it's something that they can just get into right away. However, there is a trustworthiness that is still kind of being placed on a more quote unquote traditional brand set. So they're turning to friends, families, many people in their family, especially interestingly, people who are retiring and they're okay to retire. They've really got their eye on, okay, how do I get there? And really leaning on that very close social sets advice on what types of companies to then take advice from or get into in a longer term or more serious way. So it's very interesting where there's these kind of set of tools that are super accessible, but there's also this reliance and respect for that recommendation from that set of recommendations. So they'll tell you a little bit more about that here.
I think with like standard things, like just opening a bank account, like checking savings, like I go to my mom for that. I feel like a lot of like financial instruction things online can be kind of like confusing and inaccessible. I was trying to understand what a 401k was like online for the longest time, and like just nothing made sense. But like having somebody sit down and like explain it to you in a way that like makes sense to you, I think is like way more valuable to me.
One is like a girl on Instagram. There's like a lot of free tools that she provides. She also kind of does like money coaching. She created like an Excel document that you could download and use yourself.
I do some personal investing on the side, and I use some platforms. They have this thing called a smart portfolio, where you put money into it and they will allocate it and try to give you a balanced portfolio. I don't use that because I don't know enough to really understand how they are allocating my money. But since I have other people who I'm working with, they are, fiduciaries, they're legally obliged to give me the best advice they can. I'm not going to squander my money somewhere that I'm uncertain.
Yeah, so that's certainty, right? They still are relying on what we would consider maybe a traditional set of word of mouth or financial brand set to kind of guide them in a realer way, right? But ultimately, if you've taken one thing away today, it is really this resourcefulness of this generation. It was super inspiring for both of us, honestly, to think about the future in their hands. So we've just put together a few things that kind of tap up the conversation today. We heard about getting advice from family and friends. And I loved that quote about putting it in perspective. It's not just an article online, it's telling me about how that would fit into my life and what I need to know about a 401k. That's very important. But they do want help from financial institutions as well, once they get that word of mouth. So definitely, keep an ear to the ground about what they want and need at that point, which we definitely heard loud and clear are communications that are real and help build trust. Because as you can see, there is this decision between things I use and also trust, and kind of the ability for brands to shift into that second space by speaking with them.
Right. They're really they're doing all this research online, but they're vetting that information with their friends, with their family, parents as influencers, as well as, social influencers. And then when you think about the product side, they have multiple sources of money and money out. Again, they think about these in buckets. So how can you help them integrate these sources of money and track them so that they can keep track of that budget and be less financially stressed? You heard from one of them that they want to build credit. So how do you help them do that? They may not necessarily be interested in credit cards. So how do you kind of capture this market with credit opportunities if they're not geared toward credit cards? And then they want tech tools as well as people. They're really wisely trying new things. Again, they have discretion about what they're seeing online and checking those things against other trustworthy sources. And they do look at more traditional institutions as trustworthy. So I know a couple of questions came in the chat as we've been going through. There was one about cash, and there is this kind of paradox in cash in that they are using it heavily, but they don't necessarily think about it as real money. And I think part of what's going on is that this generation is in transition and they're still getting paid in cash. They're getting tips in cash, or they're getting their side hustles or odd jobs in cash, or they're getting allowance money or money from their parents in cash. And so they still have to deal with cash, but at the same time, they're getting bank accounts and debit cards and their PayPal and Venmo and Cash App accounts.
And one thing that's important to point out is that it ranges across such a broad range of ages. So we spoke specifically to those 16 to 24 folks in some of our research, but also, if it goes down to 9 or 10 years old, there are some numbers there that reflect that cash usage as well, based on age.
Yeah, absolutely. I will also say that, again, this is part of our broader Future of Money study. This was just really to kind of whet the appetite. You can download our Future of Money study on our website, and we'll be sending the webinar and a link to that report as a follow-up. If you have other questions, we're happy to answer them. Our emails are here for you. And it looks like just kind of scanning through if there are any other questions, feel free to reach out. We wanted this to be a quick hit for you to get started. So happy to answer any other questions that you have. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. We did it 25 minutes. Not bad.
Yeah, we did.